Welcome. Hi, everyone. We are here today. We are echoing very loudly. I'm going to try to whisper in the microphone. Did you guys notice who were at NTC today that there was one of the Ignite speakers was screaming? It was like, people learn how to use microphones and then there are sound level problems. It's crazy. Anyway, we are here at the San Francisco Online Community Meetup in Exile in San Jose. And the group, for those of you who are not familiar with our community group, we are a group of online community and social media managers based in San Francisco. There's about 3,000 of us through all the membership. We've been around for about 9 years. And we usually host our meetups at TechSoup, but we are a volunteer-run group. And we are mainly online community managers, directors, and social media managers. Today we are in San Jose because many of us were here for the Nonprofit Technology Conference, and because some of our members live in San Jose anyway, or the South Bay. So we have today some exciting special stuff going on, including a Twitter contest. So for those of you, and also we are streaming online, so for those of you online and in the room, the best tweet will win one super swag bag. The best two tweets will win a super swag bag, and I can see in it, you guys can't, but I can see that the stuff is incredible in here that you really want. And for the rest of you that don't win, there's still a lot of other swag courtesy of Edutopia, like lip balm and pens and business card holders. We are Caravan Studios, the organization that I work for. And Caravan Studios is the division of TechSoup. And Caravan Studios builds apps to make the world a better place. So apps for nonprofits and apps, community-based apps. But this group, the Online Community Meetup, as I mentioned, is all volunteer run. With the volunteers who are in the room, raise their hands. Crystal. Thank you very much. And Yvonne is in the back. She's like a old-timer volunteer who just winked with her hat on. So the hashtag for tonight is OC Tribe, for Online Community Tribe. I am that person right there, Susan Tenby. And we have today a panel of people from Edutopia, both staff members and community members, and they'll be talking about activating your advocates, turning your community members into evangelists. And Ilana and Samar are here from Edutopia, and Laura is a community member of Edutopia, and Crystal, who's in the back, is a community manager at Google, and she is going to be moderating the panel. And lastly, I just wanted to mention that two mamacitas at the door made our food, and thank them because the food's fantastic. And the sangria and the ginger limeade, so thank you, two mamacitas. Thank you, Perla. And with that, I'm going to hand it off. I think the only other housekeeping notes is that the Wi-Fi is super complicated, but if you want to log on, thanks to the Wi-Fi information, it's way too much for my brain. And the bathroom's around the corner. I think that's all we have to say tonight. So thank you guys, and Crystal, take it away.
Awesome. So we go ahead and join me up here, our panelists. Susan already introduced everyone. I don't know if you want to introduce yourselves again, a little bit about yourselves, and then we have a short video about Edutopia.
Hi everyone, thanks for coming. I know it's hard after being at a conference all day and your mind's like this and you're like, okay, let me learn more, so thank you. My name is Ilana Leone. I am the Director of Social Media Strategy and Marketing at Edutopia. Been there for about 7.5 years.
I'm Laura Bradley. I teach middle school in Petaluma, and I am a community facilitator with Edutopia.
And I'm Samar Abadi. I'm the community engagement manager at Edutopia, and I've been there for about 2.5 years, going on 3.
Great. So I can go ahead. I just need to hit play, right?
So what we do at Edutopia is, our founder is George Lucas, and why don't you hit that slide just to show you one of the words of really why we're here, is that we're here to tell a story around what education looks like when it's working. What are those bright spots when we actually see education at its best. And a lot of people talk about what they want in education, but they don't really know what it looks like. So a lot of what we do day in and day out is showing what it looks like through a film documentary crew that goes around the country, through people like Laura who are in our community every day talking about it and working through how to do it in classrooms. So with that, we're gonna show you one of our newest hot off the press videos. This is from our Schools That Work series, and we could talk a little bit more about that, but we really just wanna see it speak to you first. So click on that, and it'll go to page, and then you can
The first step is to change that self-talk. I think I should go to college. I could go to college. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to graduate college. The only person that can stop you is you.
We have 100% college acceptance rate. We believe that if you put the right support mechanisms around our young men, they have an opportunity to rise above the challenges that they often deal with and become successful. Back in 2006, when we first started operating, we'd hear the statistics being about 2% of African American males were actually graduating from college. The goal is to make them want to go to college, as well as give them a very clear insight as to what to expect in college.
As soon as you come in the door, it's just you getting ready for the middle run, buddy. Like, it's a wake up call. It's in the atmosphere. Like, you can't say every prayer without thinking, man, these guys are going to college.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. I actually grew up 2 blocks from the school. So when I'm talking about college in my classes, I'm constantly stressing to them. I know exactly your frustrations. Begin to plan. Begin to set up how you will solve your problem. If you do not change that talk, you will continue to get the same results.
People can't believe they can be what they don't see. So if they never met a college graduate, they don't think that that's a possibility. So we start to plant those seeds very early on.
The first field trip they go on when they are freshmen is to a college campus. We want them to understand that in 4 years, you're gonna be at a place like this.
Every teacher has their college pennant where they graduated from. Students can look up and see, oh, can you tell me more about this school?
When y'all apply to DePaul University, I know you're gonna wanna do early admissions because you've already made up your mind and you really wanna go there. Let's figure out what it takes to get into this school.
Unfortunately, the majority of our students enter urban prep unprepared for the rigors of high school.
Students were coming to us and they were reading at the 5th grade level.
And none of them were able to perform math above the 7th grade level. So we've had to design an academic model that allows us to remediate and accelerate almost simultaneously. It's a double period of English for 4 years.
So let's go ahead and start off with one of our strong opinions. Who's ready to go?
She inherited that name, she wanted to escape that name, which means she wanted to also escape the Mexican heritage.
I strongly disagree because I can change my last name, but that may be because I want to escape my American culture that's been forced onto me.
They take a double period of math freshman and sophomore year where we really want to build that foundation in algebra and geometry. And what the research supports is that students are algebra ready by the time they complete their freshman year. They're more likely to succeed in college. Success in college is dependent upon the student's academic ability, but also their social and emotional skills.
What are some of the issues that you feel men of color may face in their first year of college?
Racism, of course, because if you look on the news, there's a lot of fraternities.
So are you talking about some of the blackface incidents? Yeah. Can you get up and go punch somebody in the face because they're making fun of your culture? No. But how do you advocate for yourself and educate them to know, like, yo, that's not cool?
Once they become seniors, we have a college process class.
Before urban prep, college was more of if I go, I go, if I don't, I don't. But once getting here, college is a must, like I have to go. Recently, I have been having to look up colleges to find out information about them to fill out certain applications. We work on our personal statements.
I say I'm very quick learner. This skill will be very useful in college because I have aspirations to become a teacher, and it takes a lot of patience and learning to be successful in the teaching environment.
You talk to them about, what to include in their city, what not to include. We talk about financial aid.
They're encouraged to apply to 11 schools, 2 probable schools, a rich school, 2 safety schools. We want them to have a variety of options.
I was like, I don't believe I can get into these schools, but she's like, you most definitely have the scores. She pushed me to sit there and say, I'm not gonna let a school deny me.
It teaches us about like responsibility. It's our job to get the essays done and finish all the applications on our own and then have them check off on it.
I think about college every day. I'm so amped up for it right now. It's just a burden burning in me to get there.
The best ritual in the world to me is what we call on to the next one. Is when we present our seniors with their red and gold tie for being accepted to their first college or university.
I had trouble sleeping last night because of the excitement.
I've been accepted to Hampton University, Tuskegee University, St. John's University.
I feel good. I've been waiting 4 long years for this red and gold tie.
This is a generational shift. So now all of his cousins and siblings are looking to him and say, hey, if he did it, then I can do it too.
We're changing this narrative around what is possible for young black men, what is possible for this population, what is possible for these communities.
So we just wanted to start, thank you. So we have a film crew that goes around the country and tells stories like this all of the time. And what we hope is not to just tell the story, but to empower a community to say, how can I do that in my own school, in my own environment, whatever that may be. So it's really the aim to adapt it in their own environment. Because for us, it's not just about telling stories. It's let's move the needle. Let's inspire others to say that this school came from a place where they were as well. It can be easy, especially with our community, to help them along the way. So with that, I'll give it to Kristen.
Cool. Okay, so the way we're going to run this tonight, we have some questions prepared just to get our panel talking, and then we're going to go to you. So if you have questions along the way, definitely think of them. We will, just because we are recording this as a live stream, when we start to take the questions, we'll run the mic in the audience. Even though it's a small room, we can all hear you. We want to have the audio mic'd for those viewing the live stream. I think we should start off with basically getting a high-level view of how does Edutopia define community?
We have a very simple philosophy, which is community is community. So basically for us, a community of Edutopia is anywhere that people are talking about us or talking with us. So when I first joined the organization, it was a little bit different. I was brought on specifically to work with the house community at edutopia.org. But over the course of the last 2.5 years, we've really been evolving that sense of what does it mean to be in the community of Edutopia. And so now it includes, for example, when we look at our social care tool, it incorporates everything from the house community to Facebook, to Twitter, to YouTube. So basically any of the social spaces where we maintain a presence, someone's talking to us, that's part of our community.
And it's so critical for us. Like I said, everything we do are conversation starters for them to start to put it in their own hands and see, how can I do this? So wherever they're talking about our brand, it's critical for us to not only engage with them, but connect them to resources and people that can help along the way.
The community plays a really important part in terms of the overall mission of the organization, because the community is the place where people can start exploring this idea of adaptability, of like, how can I take this practice and what does it look like in my classroom? One of the things that I noticed really early on in my tenure at Edutopia was this question is of, this is fine, this is great, but what does it look like in 4th grade? What does it look like in math? What does it look like in high school or with this number of students with this kind of schedule? And it's impossible for us as, you know, as an organization with a set number of staff to be able to answer all of those contextual questions, which is why the community is really important, because the community can then answer that question. I mean, one of the things that's really important for us is for people have, like Laura here, who could say, well, this is how it would work in my classroom in English in middle school. I mean, do you want to add?
So speaking of, you know, a set number of staff, and with your community being so widely varied, how is your team actually structured? And how does that structure help achieve your program's goals?
Let me take a crack at that, and you're welcome to jump in. So we are lucky to have a couple of more members in our team, and it did start with just me. So anybody can start with any kind of size. I don't want it to be intimidating to start. I started looking at how can we be most efficient with the people that are working for us full time, and I started to slowly evolve into, I have one branch of people that their job is solely to program on social media. Their job is to really make sure that they're understanding the channels and really getting this stuff out there to the people that need to see it and the people that want to do something with it. So they're on Facebook, they're on Twitter, they're on YouTube, they're programming all the time. They're creating that conversation for Sammer's team, and then what we're calling the social engagement team, to jump in and say, how can I help you? You know, maybe you need a resource here. So we really do branch it out for social programming and social engagement.
I mean, the interesting thing for me is that it's the thing that we keep in mind is that mission. Again, it's the adaption question. It's the making sure all the questions get answered. And one of the things that I was embarrassed by really early on was that there were questions on the site that were not getting answered. And so that's where our community facilitator program came from, because there were these questions. I mean, and there are teachers that work at Edutopia, but for the most part, they're not on the social team, they're not on the community team. And I'm not a teacher, and so we need to have that authentic voice, you know, to be able to respond to folks. And so we play the role of connector, and that's where the community facilitator team came from, is that the first step was to answer questions. And then once we saw that happening, they started creating content. They started writing posts, blog posts. They started to become incorporated into the rest of the organization as what they brought to the table became more and more recognized within the organization. And so you've been, for example, a facilitator for at least a year at this point, right?
We're coming on
2 years. And so, like, what's the breadth of the kind of work that you do for the organization?
I try to spend time every day on Edutopia's Facebook page and also edutopia.org. So reading the posts and then spending time in the comment threads, trying to answer questions if I can, but I feel like even more than that, it's trying to keep a certain tone in the comment threads. So it's really easy in education to become very negative and to challenge suggestions by other people about how to make your classroom better. And so a big challenge for us is to help make the tone more positive, to make suggestions to people. I'm glad that we shared the urban prep video, because that was one that generated a lot of criticism about, people were saying, why is it just for boys? Why are they all black? Where's the Asian kids? Where's the white kids? Why are they wearing uniforms? Why are they chanting? You know, there were all sorts of criticisms about it, and so that's been a challenge the past few days, to try to suggest reasons why this is working here, and to help people understand why certain methods in one neighborhood might be more appropriate than in another. So that's one thing I really love about this work, is that challenge, because I love teaching, but it is very difficult, and so I want to be a part of the positive side of it as opposed to getting caught up in the negative.
Hold on one sec. We want to make sure that all questions use the mic, so.
Could you just talk about the logistics of how you as a facilitator find the question to answer? I mean, that is, do you receive an email from Edutopia, or are you actually searching the threads? as a
Good
community
question, yeah.
manager, like how does it actually work?
Right, so there is a spreadsheet that all of the facilitators have access to, and Sammer and his team, I'm assuming, drop in every time there's a new post on the site, it goes in there. They color coded about whether or not there's an urgent question or just take a look at it. And so that's how we know what's new on the site. Facebook is a little bit tougher, so I just go to the Edutopia page on Facebook and just start scrolling through and looking to see what's there. And then we also have a really valuable part of our process is a private Facebook group that's just for Edutopia and the facilitators. And so we will tag each other in there. Someone will say, here's a question, can anyone answer this? Or here's one for high school English, Brian, can you handle this? And that has proven to be very valuable to keep everybody in the loop.
I will add that the spreadsheet started off with staff maintaining it, but it's being maintained by a couple of facilitators. So they are being paid. We do compensate them for the extra time, and it is an extra responsibility. But one of the interesting things is that we wanted to avoid any of the legal dangers around, giving volunteers work that belongs to staff. And so for a number of the facilitators who we do ask for kind of going above and beyond what would normally be asked from a volunteer, we actually use a professional employment organization, a PEO, to actually employ them. So they're technically contractors for that company that then we contract with them. So it's a way for us to, one, recognize the value that they provide to the organization, and it keeps us out of legal trouble.
Awesome. I was wondering, we've dug a bit into the facilitator program. You mentioned that the facilitator program was actually kind of a cart before the horse kind of thing, where you noticed this need, people started filling this need, and then you developed the program around it. Can you guys go into a little bit about how the program was actually developed and how you incorporated the existing kind of pre-facilitators into a formal facilitator program?
Sure. One of the reasons why, so I talked about answering questions early on. The other thing that was going on was when I first was hired, we were in the process of moving from Drupal 6 to Drupal 7 for our content management system. And along with that process, we decided to redesign the community sections of the site. There was, in all honesty, it was somewhat embarrassing how siloed the community portion of the site was at that time. And so we wanted to bring it out. We wanted to make it more visible. We wanted to elevate the community voices. One of my fears was that if we were to suddenly make the community more visible, that the echoing emptiness of certain portions of the community would become very evident. And so one of the other things, that's one of the reasons why we wanted to get those questions answered, obviously, but also to generate community content. And so of our early facilitators, we asked them every month to write at least one community post. So to start contributing to the user-generated content on the site. And so at one point we had something like 20 to 25 new posts on the site, specifically coming from people who were community facilitators. And that was a great way, a month, excuse me. And so that was a great way to, one, just show that the aliveness of the kinds of experiences people were having in their classrooms, and for them to be able to share because all the people who were facilitators were mentors in some way. They were experts in what they were doing, and so there's a way to get them sharing and to get those experiences into the wider world. And then also just to prepare the site for this transition to a more visible community.
Yeah, and I just add that as we started creating this great content that was coming authentically from the educators, then we had this boomerang effect. So then this programming team can say, great, I got awesome, authentic material that they could tweet out, we can throw it on Facebook, and then it created more engagement. So having community actually structured within, I guess what you'd call us as the communication marketing team, really has helped us come together with our processes.
It's been really remarkable to see the rise of this user-generated content at Edutopia. We went from a place where we were getting maybe 25 to 50,000 page views a month for the community content to 300,000. Whereas in fact some of our most popular content is actually coming from the community as being self-published.
That's awesome, really impressive. So you mentioned a couple of things that differentiate the facilitator program from other moderation programs. What are other aspects that you feel really differentiated? And Laura especially, what do you think really differentiates the facilitator program for you and kind of prompts your continued involvement in it?
I feel like Edutopia has done a really good job to make sure that we know that we are a community, just the facilitators and us with them. We have Google Hangouts every once in a while, and most of them are on the East Coast, I feel like, maybe to get the 3-hour advantage, because they're online earlier than we are. And so we've met maybe once, but we have these Google Hangouts as a way to know that we're a community. The Facebook page is a great way to build us up as a community, and they're forever boasting about how great we are. And I don't know, I know they're doing it on purpose. I don't know if they realize that.
Because you literally save us every day. She saves us every day.
Educators don't hear that stuff very often, and so, anybody, most people just don't hear it enough.
And education especially, it's a really thankless role.
Yeah, so we feel valued, and I do have to say, getting paid is really important. I was asked years ago to do a blog post for Edutopia, and I was happy to do it. I wasn't paid for it, but it was brand new for me, and I thought, oh, that's kind of cool to get a blog out there. But the work that we do now is every day, every week. It's not easy, especially when you're teaching full time, and so being paid is pretty important. It would be fun to hang out on the Edutopia site, but to do this work regularly, there needs to be compensation.
Just one thing is, as we started looking about our role as a brand, when we're in moderating discussions, just like many of you are with your brand, we had to kind of really strategically say, what is our role as a brand versus what is a facilitator role? Because facilitators are experts of their domain. They are educators on the ground. So if someone's saying, hey, I can't do that in 2nd grade because of X, we actually have a 2nd grade teacher who can say, hey, here's what I did. We can never be that authentic when we're in the classroom, but what we can do is become connectors. But it's very clear that we needed to have that authentic viewpoint in there to spur it and say, here's what I do.
There are a mix of volunteers and paid facilitators. The volunteer ones have a lot more leeway in terms of when they come in and when they go out. It really is based on when they have time. And so we recognized that we needed that presence that Ilana talked about on a more regular basis. And even with that, we have to overbook hours because there is a seasonality to teacher schedules. There are times when we just know they're all going to be radio silent because it's either testing or it's the start of the year. Or they're all like decompressing at the same time.
Do you see increased or decreased kind of demand for connection and conversation during that time, just out of comparison?
It depends on the time period. Like when the first month of summer, you think that you would never hear from a teacher because they're all on the beach somewhere. No, that's when they're suddenly thinking about all the things that they were doing at the end of the year that they want to document and they want to share with everybody. So there was actually a lift last year in June. I'm like, where are all these posts coming from? Why aren't these people relaxing? They just had their year just ended. Why don't they just kind of take a breath? But they wanted to get all that stuff out while they were thinking about it. So it really does. It does change. I would say in terms of things that make this different, the PEO is a big deal. I think it's really important given some of the legal stuff that's happened around moderation and community management, taking care of yourself legally. I think recognizing like what is the actual availability of people and then scheduling around it is really important, and then budgeting around it is really important. We're still figuring it out. We've got last year's numbers that we're playing with, and we're trying to peg that amount of like how much we overbook by, so that we actually get to where we need to be. And at some point this year, we're combining what the facilitators are doing with what our bloggers do and some of our other folks into hopefully a larger ambassador program. But that's something that we're figuring out this year. We're going to be learning in public about it, and I think we're probably talk about it.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add to that of what differentiates this program is that they're not just focusing on a house community, and that was a big transition for us. So for a while, SAMR had facilitators, and their role was just the house community. Meanwhile, my team was struggling. We were getting so many brand mentions, and people need authentic advice on the ground. So I was like, we need to do something. We need to make a transition. So we actually started with 3 facilitators first. 3 or 2?
One. Our
One.
guinea pig.
We started with 1, and then I think it went to 3. But that we said your role is going to be a myriad between Facebook and house community, because we weren't sure that this transition would work. Facebook is a little bit more of a, it's an anonymous community, it's a social community, it's very different than a professional education community. So we weren't sure that what we were asking facilitators could be handled. Especially at night on Facebook, they have a glass of wine, they want to talk about, education, and we're like, okay, hold on, how are we going to turn this around?
Beware the teacher at night with a glass of wine.
But in order to do that, we really tried to support them. So we created documentation, a guide that actually outlined what would the brand say versus what the facilitator would say. And then we created a Voxer group. Does anyone know about that walkie-talkie app, Voxer? It's free. A lot of educators use it, so it was just kind of a nice way to talk it through and say, hey, what are you thinking? Do you like being on Facebook more than others? So being able to reflect, and then SAMR and I reflect, and then be able to roll it out to the entire facilitator core.
That Vox group didn't last, by the way. But the Facebook group really has shown that it has been valuable all the way through.
So on that topic, at its heart, you could call Edutopia a media company, but most media companies do not engage with their communities, with the public as much as Edutopia does, both through staff and through the facilitator program. So on those brand voice, those guidelines of kind of who says what, what's appropriate where, can you talk a little bit about how that was developed and the process you went through with that?
Sure, so where we started was actually by documenting our own voice. So we actually had a project in-house where we looked at Edutopia's voice, primarily on Facebook, and we created personas for all the different kinds of things we were saying. So we had a researcher persona, we had an encourager persona, we had a millennial persona where we were having fun with folks. And then we looked at those and made a strategic decision based on our resources, based on staff time, where are the priority areas where we are going to be engaging. And then if those are our priorities, where we have something we can say, where are the other areas where things need to be said, but it's not us that's saying it. And so that's where we developed a matrix of like, here are the kinds of things that need to be addressed. Here are the versions where Edutopia might respond, and here are the versions where the community facilitators might respond. So, someone acknowledging challenges and offering solutions, that's a line of the matrix. Another line is like crisis language. About once a year we see someone who says, I think I've had enough, where enough means they're contemplating suicide. That's very clear, Edutopia's domain. Facilitators do not engage, alert us, there's a process for it. And those are the kinds of things you see in that matrix. It's fairly high level because the varieties, there's no way to document all of it. And folks, at this point, there's enough experience built up, enough institutional knowledge amongst the facilitators that's being shared that, they help each other through like the weird cases, or if someone's new, like learning the ropes.
Yeah, and I think that the point about being a media company is really interesting, because if you look at New York Times, you look at Mashable, any of those on Facebook, there is zero engagement. And they do that on purpose, they really just want people to digest what they're doing and for them to cover new stories from there. But for us, just leaving conversation like that, say if we left Urban Prep up there and they took something out of that video that they didn't understand, and then it turned into a firestorm of people just attacking it, we can't do that. For us, the conversation is so critical to our brand and it's so critical to who we are and our mission that we want to jump in there. We're still trying to figure out what that sweet spot is. No one knows the sweet spot for engagement, right? So we get, how many per month you say in terms of engagements?
For Facebook,
Sure.
it's between 5 and 10,000.
So between 5 and 10,000, and we look at actively what percentage of that are we hitting with facilitators and without facilitators. So, you know, on a monthly basis, we'll look at, are we hitting 2% of brand mentions to 6% of brand mentions? We don't have a goal. What we want to do is track when we engage, what are we doing, and what is the result. So we're going to be walking you through our tool that we chose to do that, but we look at and we tag it and say, is that impactful? Did something happen as a result of that engagement?
Yeah, it's much more important to us that instead of tracking the engagement rate, but to track the impacts, to track the user behavior that we want to see. So for example, we have a tag that we use in our social care tool called Helped. And so Helped is used whenever someone engages in behavior that we would normally expect from either staff or a facilitator. And so that's we want to be able to track that kind of virtuous behavior so that we can figure out, like, okay, so we're seeing an uptick, what are we doing that's different, that's creating this uptick, so that we can continue doing that.
And you track that on your house platform in addition to the social platforms?
Yes.
Awesome. So I think that covers pretty much kind of what success looks like. Do you have any more thoughts on kind of how you measure success for the various types of engagements?
I think that really is it. It's really hard though. I feel like it's merely been a challenge, especially in our house community in the past, like being able to track it because we didn't have any really good tools for it. I feel like we're just starting to get to a place now.
Yeah, I mean, we have the traditional growth metrics where we're looking to grow our voice in all of our communities, where we measure success on all of our social channels, including our house communities. We look at, are we referring people to the resources they need, so referral traffic, brand awareness, are we reaching new people? I mean, we're not going to change education by reaching the same people. And in fact, our brand is really anyone who wants to improve K-12 education, which makes the conversation harder, especially on our platforms, because the bigger we get, say a post goes viral like Urban Prep, we have moms, we have people that just happen to be friends of somebody who's a fan on Edutopia. You get all sorts of conversations going on, and you know, this woman is magically jumping in and being able to navigate and create some positivity. And then on our team, we're able to give them resources they need and clear up any confusions too.
I have a question. How do you know when we're being successful? I'm asking Laura.
How do I know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious from your side.
It is hard, and I just want to back up and say, one of the reasons that I do participate in this is because of those comment threads that we see on other sites that are not moderated or facilitated, that turn into a real negative, awful place. And I really appreciate Edutopia's goal of making it a place where teachers get help. They don't just vent, but they actually get help. What's unusual is for people to then respond to the help, and I feel like that's when you've been successful. So someone might say, I don't see how this would work in my classroom, and so I might say, well, this is how I see it working in my classroom, and then that person actually responds and says, oh, I hadn't thought about that, that might work. So that's a huge success, but I think that's not, you don't see that as often. We actually had some people on the Urban Prep threads who said, oh, I hadn't thought about that. Maybe that is a good reason that they're wearing uniforms. I feel like we're really successful when people who I think are just reading it, they're not actually officially part of the community, who do what we do, who give positive, encouraging, and give resources and defend someone who was attacked. And we see that too. Someone will attack someone and someone else will say, that really wasn't very nice. And so seeing the general community mirror what we're trying to do, I think is a sign of success.
What you're alluding to is really this tipping point in all communities, right? So for a while, we're kind of more hands-on, like Sam was saying, we have full-time employees doing a lot of things, trying to really cultivate this community. But even more recently in our Facebook community, we're seeing people that we've never even seen before jump in and help out. Like they've already been able to say, here's the culture of this community on a very social medium like Facebook that is not very professional generally. People usually say things anonymously, somewhat mean, and then leave because they can. But they don't do that generally in our community. And when you see them actually helping others, that for me is so inspiring. We call those wins, and we start tracking them and saying, have we reached the tipping point that organically people are jumping in and helping each other?
One of the most important things that our facilitators do is they model good behavior. They set the tone, and they are the seeds of the culture of the community. And that is probably the most valuable things that they do.
I'm always right. So this is really hard for me, this modeling. I have learned so much about how to be better online. And I teach middle school, and so online behavior is part of what I'm trying to teach them. And so I have learned so much just watching how Sammer handles people online. And I just have really learned a lot about backing up and not having to be right all the time. And then I was going to say another big win is when someone in the community will contact me privately. We can do private messaging on Edutopia, and then that person becomes sort of a colleague who I haven't actually met. Peter won't leave me alone. There's just lots and lots of back and forth, back and forth.
Oh, no, that's not who she was talking about.
You should apply for this, and I'll apply for that, and then will you read my application? And so that's huge. Teachers, I started in the age of the typewriter, and I couldn't even communicate with the teacher next door to me, let alone across the country. But if a teacher Googles classroom management tips, they're going to get 24 million hits, and a lot of it is garbage. And so I call Edutopia the field-tested, research-based mini Google for educators, because there's just really solid stuff there, easy to find.
And the amazing thing is we don't tell the facilitators what to say at all. No, seriously, one of the guidelines that's documented is we just want you to be yourself. So what happens is that we pick great people and we tell them all we want you to do is to spend time here. We'll point you to some things where people need help and we want to connect you to like people who might benefit from your expertise. But we don't tell them what to say. We don't tell them to push Edutopia resources. We tell them whatever makes sense for you to connect this person to, do it. And so it really is I call it the Miracle on 34th Street strategy, the Macy's thing, where it's like, if you want to go to Gimbels to get that toy, go to Gimbels, And because we really don't care. Our mission is to make sure that these practices get adopted, that people know about them, that they know that schools can work and how to get to that place. And so if it means reading an Edutopia blog, hey, that's great. If it means going to Castle or some other resource like Buck to do for project-based learning, that's fine too. We don't care. We just want people to be able to find the help that they need to help the students that they have.
Yeah,
Just really quickly, I was gonna say.
I was just gonna explain the Macy's Gimbals, their Miracle on 34th Street thing. Are there people who don't get that reference? Because I was surprised. I thought it was like a universal thing, and I would reference it all the time, and I would get blank stares. So in the original, and I think the remake of Miracle on 34th Street, the Santa is a Santa at Macy's. And they're sold out of the most popular toy, whatever it was. And he tells a mother to go to Gimbels. And the store manager hears that Santa has been sending people to their competitor, which is Gimbels. And he is just outraged, and he is about to fire Santa. And then one of the customers comes up to him and says, I'm so happy. I think it's amazing that your Santa sent me to Gimbels because you didn't have this toy. And I'm gonna go over to Gimbels and get this, but I'm gonna come back and do all the rest of my shopping here. And it's this customer service analogy of if you are not losing anything because you don't have the content, you don't have the product, you don't have the service somebody needs, so you're not losing anything, it doesn't hurt to send them to a competitor. And they're going to remember that you sent them there, that you helped them get what they needed in their time of need, more than they are going to value kind of the competitor over you. That's kind of the analogy behind it.
Yeah, I mean, we have over 10,000 pieces of content on our website alone, but we don't even claim to have everything for education, especially as the field of education technology. There's so many movements moving so fast, there's no way we would have enough. And in fact, that's what our whole curation division is about, is really kind of saying there's amazing resources out there. The last thing I just wanted to say is with the movement of facilitators, at first there were a couple of them, especially in the Voxer group, they were trying to be this Edutopia infomercial. They're like, yes, okay, here's an Edutopia resource for you, and I'm sorry you thought that, but the author is trying to say this. You know, really being yourself is key, and when we said, hey, you don't need to do that, just be yourself, it was this sigh. And we got this authenticity from them. It was just really awesome.
That's a great point. I think that speaks more to the community as well, when they feel that the people who are not staff are being authentic with them. So you mentioned, I think Samar, you mentioned a new platform that you were changing to. So you recently launched a new social engagement platform. So I'd love to hear kind of, because I think changing platforms, changing technologies is something a lot of people go through in making those decisions. So can you go over kind of why the need for change, how you came to your decision, and then I think Alana's going to show us a little demo of it as well.
So we adopted Engager this year. We went through a process in the second half of last year where we did a discovery on a number of different social care tools. And we created a list of criteria of what we really needed. We knew that our process was evolving. We knew that our team was evolving. And we had this ambassador program that we knew we were going to be starting this year. And so we needed to find a way that, because the team was going to effectively stay static in terms of size, and that the number of mentions was going to just continue to grow, we need to be able to leverage the resources that we had in terms of the community facilitators, and we need to be much better at identifying where staff needed to intervene, where staff needed to engage. And so the previous tool we were using was a great tool, but everything was coming in, and we had to look at every single mention. So what we needed to do was find a tool that helped us winnow that huge fire hose that was coming in. And not just one hose, but like multiple hoses, because we're talking about Facebook and Twitter and House and everything else that we were going to be bringing in. And so we settled on Engager because primarily of two things. One, actually three things. One, it has a really robust set of automations, and so what makes it into the inbox is passing through several filters, and so we're able to see a much smaller segment of the fire hose than we would have previously, so that is really helpful. Two, we're able to set up additional automations so that some of that smaller inbox is already getting segmented out for individuals. So for example, we have a couple of smart folders that are for specific social staff for influencer marketing. The other thing that we're doing is that, the other thing that it does is that it's from Clarabridge bought them. And so the Insights suite, the metrics stuff is really robust. It's been really interesting. And then the third piece is that there are ways to email people outside of the tool about specific engagements. So for example, let's say I see a question in the inbox, it's come in through Facebook, and I say, I don't have the answer to this question. None of the facilitators know it, but I know this person who's a blogger on, for example, differentiated instruction, John McCarthy, he would know the answer to that question. I can then send him via email that question from the tool. And so in my mind, that would be very useful once we have an ambassador program, because we have an expectation that these ambassadors are going to be mentors in our community. Having a way from inside the tool to contact people about engagements and then point them to it would be really useful. And so that's one of the reasons why we ended up with this tool.
So I got a little distracted. I started like resolving things. I'm like, oh gosh. So this is a really mild night, but I was just like, what are they talking about? And you saw that one of them was talking about an image and being like sarcastic, and you're like, do I engage? Do I leave it alone? And so these are the things we ask of ourselves when we're like
on there resolving, and then
Come this way, your mic's, the other mic's speaking.
and then we also, like Laura was saying, we have a Facebook group. So we're like, hey, there's a Smart Aleck or that really needs help. We'll go ahead and put that on the Facebook group as well. But as you can see, this queue is very narrowed down to what we normally see. So you don't see a lot of the noise in it. And that's really helped us. And Samara was talking about advanced algorithms that you can do. So you can do the and/or Boolean queries as well. So now we just want to see what we want to see. And then we want to have folders for specific things that we want to look at. So it's really helpful for us to not get overwhelmed by the noise in social media.
It really was, I mean, the primary driver for the change was finding a way to better prioritize staff time. Because we were getting lost. We used to have a system where there was somebody on all the time, and we would be doing these social shifts, and we'd take turns, and we'd be on from 8 a.m. to about 9 p.m. And it just became impossible. And so we have a new system where we come in the morning. It's somewhat of a team shift where we get through the mentions that came in overnight. And then the rest of the day we treat it like an inbox with the goal of hitting inbox 0 by the time we leave at the end of the day. And then because we have our facilitators, we have folks in different time zones, that they're keeping an eye on things as well. And it really is much more manageable, and it's much more sane than what we were previously doing. It used to be a little crazy, honestly.
So, question, is this list that you're?
It's all on.
So 2 questions, what we're seeing, is that a list of your influencers? Because I see the facilitators being lit on. And then could you talk about, Samir, what you were saying earlier with how you use this for influencer marketing? Is that based on specific questions, like content that you're seeding and kind of targeting for influencers to engage with, or more organic if it happens, then you spotlight it afterwards and kind of tag it as an influencer to come back to and engage with?
The answer is yes. It's a mixture of both. So we can tag lots of different things. There are both comment level tags and user level tags. And so the facilitator tag that you're seeing there is a user level tag. She's one of our community facilitators. We have tags for advocates, we have tags for influencers, we have tags for staff. The Schools at Work video that you saw, if we happen to see one of the educators there's a tag for Schools at Work educators so that we can track when they're involved in the conversations. And we have tags for trolls and for other people not to engage with. And so those are really helpful at the tag level. At the comment level, it's more about like the kind of content. If it's a win, if it's impact, if it's any of those kinds of things.
I want to say 2 things that it doesn't do that I'd love it to do, or another tool, and if you guys know of a tool that does this. If somebody, say, engaged with your brand over a threshold that you feel like it's an advocate status, right? Over 20 times they've engaged with you over a certain period. If it can auto tag that, and then be able to elevate it so we can treat them differently. Right now, we're having to do that manually. Another one is influencers, right? So a lot of times we'll be able to spot them as we look. And we do a second smart folder and kind of do a check for any influencers that engage with us. But it's more of a manual process, and we can easily spot them based on influencers too.
That actually, so now there's an automation that automatically identifies a definition that we've created for an influencer. Anyone over X number of followers, for example, will automatically get tagged with the influencer tag. And so what happens is that those folks who we've identified, either by manually tagging them as influencers or through this automation, will show up into that folder that then the social team can look at, say who's in here, who should we engage with right now, are there any surprises that came in organically, and so it gives us an opportunity to be much more intentional about it by separating those folks out automatically and through the manual processes that we've had.
Yeah, and the other side of the social engagement team, the programming team actually sometimes creates fun graphics for the influencers. We'll be able to engage with them and try to find ways to support them, to get retweets from them. So it's that extra effort for the influencers and the advocates to make their day. A lot of the times we'll send them goodie bags in the mail. We'll do things and listen to them when they don't think anybody's listening, especially in education. So it's really exciting for us to kind of do that delight.
And in terms of like the interesting, so this is the last 28 days of our mentions across channels, and you could do really the cool stuff in terms of, like, for example, let's say we want to take a look at what our facilitators have done. I can actually filter for them and see their activity over the last 28 days. So our facilitators altogether have made 441 mentions over the last 28 days. If I want to look, for example, at and this is something I've always wanted and I've not had, and so I'm really excited by, which is, I've lost the mouse, where is it? There it is. So I can actually now look at gratefulness language. So I'm looking at now all mentions that have the word thanks, thank you, I appreciate, grateful, this is great, I love this. And so I can see that there were approximately 2,000, a little over 2,000 mentions that use that gratefulness language. And then I can actually see what that language is by clicking over here and say, here's Edutopia, I appreciate the extension, you know, thank you for sharing. So this is a great way for me then to show our executive director, our board, this is the kind of community we have. This is the sharing that's happening, this is the gratefulness that's happening. And this is not something I've been able to do before, and I'm really pleased to be able to do now.
That's super cool.
Oh, look at Reading Rainbow replied to one of our tweets.
That's the big time. Love it. So this is amazing, and I'm sure we could go down the rabbit hole with this, but we are having to wrap up. So I'm gonna ask last question for kind of that I have for our panel. And then I think we'll have time for one, maybe two, if they're really quick questions. And then we'll be done for the night. So what is next for Edutopia? We've seen some amazing things. What you've got going on with the social engagement platform here is, I have not seen anything like that, especially the gratefulness. What's next?
It's an ambassador program. I mean, we knew this was coming last year when we were doing our strategic planning process. We're in the middle of a discovery period right now. We just finished doing an internal needs assessment. Now we're doing the external piece. So we want to talk to the folks who are likely to be who are in this program about what their expectations are for a program like this from Edutopia. We want to know what they feel like they would need from us and what they feel like they could give us. And once we have that piece to mirror what our own internal, responsibilities and obligations that we're putting together, then we'll be able to, I feel like, have a program that will work for the organization. But we have to go through that process first. I have to say that, I had a number of people last year saying, what's going to be in the ambassador program? What's going to be in the ambassador program? And I'm like, I don't know what's going to be in the ambassador program because I haven't talked to the people who are going to be in it yet. And I think it's really important to be able to have that conversation with those folks, because we could create something, but if it doesn't meet the needs of our audience, then we've just wasted our time. And it's been really important to do that.
Yeah, our founder, George Lucas, really talks about people like Laura, people like lots of people that are in the trenches every day, and what we're doing is arming them. And he says we need to arm the warriors. We need to arm the warriors of education. So just picture them with their, their Edutopia swords and shields out there, and that's really that's really what we want to do. I think beyond just the ambassador program, we're really looking at scaling up our social presence. So the more active we are and the more we're learning about per channel syndication, the more we can actually spark that conversation to begin with. And within the ambassador program too, we're looking at lots of different angles. So with George saying arming the warriors, it's about how can we get them to tell their story more. Maybe we can train them about how to use a video camera. Maybe we can get them to be little journalistic reporters here and there. Maybe we can arm them and have them be taught what they want to be taught to be able to spread their message.
The advantage that we have is that we already have a proto program, and both in terms of the community facilitators, which we've talked about tonight, but also our blogger core, which unfortunately Betty Ray, who's our director of the editorial team, isn't here and can't talk about how her team of bloggers is in many ways doing some similar work where they're sharing their resources, they're answering questions, and they're out in the wider education field. So we've got a couple of internal programs informally that are already in many ways proto-ambassador programs, but the goal is to then formalize those into kind of a more structured program.
Awesome. And okay, so we have time for 2 questions. I saw your hand first.
so a quick question. A lot of what I'm hearing is about the community and engagement and social media. A lot of the nonprofits that we work with are talking about collecting user information and reaching out to them, and that's what they view as engagement. I'm not hearing anything about a CRM or anything like that. Are y'all steering away from that? I mean,
We have a CRM, we use Salesforce, and in many ways this almost acts like a CRM as well, but we have an advantage in that we don't ask our community for money. You know, it really for us is all about the mission, and so it becomes more about what do you need from us as opposed to what we need from you.
I think everybody's trying to crack that social CRM holy grail. There's not a great product out there. There's some great integrations you can do to make it work. Right now we're using Salesforce as a CRM, but it's really not connecting to our social data. It can, so we just didn't want to pay the extra money for it right now because we wanted to get our feet wet with what this capacity could do to begin with. But that is where you can then start correlating to donation data, to do they read our emails and our newsletters, and that's where the conversions around getting their emails really helps. Because we are trying to build up our email channel, realizing that we don't have control over our social communities, we never will, but what we can do is try to capture them in other areas and serve their needs a little bit better than Facebook could sometimes.
For an organization that has limited resources, where do you think is the best place to invest your money to engage in a community in Facebook or create your own in-house community?
That is such a tough question without knowing your community. I will say that Facebook is the largest community out there, so more than likely your constituents are there, but I would like you to do some kind of data analysis. You can actually upload your email list and see what percentage of your audience is on Facebook and what a lookalike audience would be on. So I would kind of challenge you to look and see, is your audience on Facebook? Are they talking about you now on Facebook? That's how I got on the social spaces on Facebook and Twitter, is we were getting asked to be on those social spaces, and many of our competitors were already on there, but we wanted to make sure we weren't just jumping in for the sake of it being cool, is that our audience was there and truly needed us, because we have to pick and choose social spaces too. And once you're there, you're pretty much married to that social space, unless it goes under. So really pick and choose wisely. House communities versus social communities kind of serve completely different needs. Maybe I'll let Samer chime in.
I would ask you where your audience already is. Like, what is the space that they're already in? And if that space doesn't serve your needs, then maybe you need to look at creating a space for them. But if you create a space, then that means you have to maintain it. And you know, these communities, and every community manager knows this, it's a garden that needs to be tended. If you build it, they will come kind of a deal. It never has been that situation. And so if you create a space, then just know you're in it for the long haul. And that's true actually if it's on social or it's a house community. It's like wherever you create it, you're gonna need to be in for the long haul and to tend it, because it's gonna need tending.
So unfortunately, we've had such a good discussion here tonight that we don't have time for any more questions. But I'm sure they'll be around for a little bit after. We'll have about 10 minutes to network, 10 or 15 minutes to network. And there's great bars down on San Pedro Square if you want to go have really extended conversations afterwards. Susan's gonna say goodnight to us and announce the Twitter winner and say thank you to our wonderful panelists here today.
And thank you to Crystal for moderating. Crystal does an amazing job moderating and everything else she does. And you guys can probably hang out for 15 or 20 here, 20 minutes here. Thank you all. You did a great job, and it's super interesting stuff, and this is incredible, and I wish we could have it. We'd like to also carry on the conversation on the hashtag OC Tribe, because this is an ongoing hashtag. It's not just for this event. It's a community bound by the hashtag. So you guys can just continue any conversation on the OC Tribe hashtag. And with that, I am happy to present the winners. So, dramatically. I'm gonna do first runner-up, because we have 2 prizes, right? Yeah. First runner-up, second place, Ken Montenegro. Okay, I saw guy with glasses. Okay. And the winner, oh, this is the second, that's the second place, yeah.
Still awesome.
It's still awesome. And the grand prize swag winner, swag bag, my phone just died, but I remember the name. Sierra, there has to be only one Sierra, Jenkins. Yeah. Sierra Jenkins. Yay! Congratulations, thank you. And to answer the question of Todd, how was the winner chosen? I decided a couple minutes ago that the winner was chosen by the most engagement on the tweet, rather than my favorite tweet. So you got the most engagement. Congratulations, thank you guys. And see you next month in San Francisco.